Hello everyone, Chemistry Chapter 3, Metals and Non-Metals. Let's begin. Lots of theory, so keep your notebooks and pens handy. You are advised to take notes as I teach. You can pause the video in between, take notes, and move ahead with me. So that's a good, you can say, method of revision. If you want to revise efficiently, then take notes while watching the video. That will help you a lot. Okay. No need to, you can say, study the chapter again and again, revise again and again. You can watch the video and revise with the video. I'm sure this chapter has been done in many of the schools. So this is kind of a, you can say, extra for you. Okay, so keep your pen and notebooks with you. Let's start. So we know that the materials around us are made up of elements, and there are 118 elements known at present. We can classify these elements. We can classify these 118 elements known at present in many ways, depending on the similarities and differences in their properties. But one of the most useful classification is to broadly classify the elements in two main categories, that is metals and non-metals. Okay, so what are metals? Metals are generally hard solids, except mercury, which is a liquid. There are many exceptions. So we'll definitely go to the part of exceptions in these general classifications and properties and types. But you can keep in mind, or you can take notes whenever I talk about exceptions. Okay. And non-metals, what are they? Non-metals are solid, liquids, and gases. Of the known elements, only 22 are non-metals. Out of 118, only 22 are non-metals. Out of these, 10 non-metals are solids, one non-metal is a liquid, whereas remaining 11 non-metals are gases. Bromine is the only liquid non-metal. Remember that. And here, don't tell me that, sir, water is also non-metal and it is liquid. Water is not an element. Water is a compound. Okay, so water does not classify into metals and non-metals as far as we are concerned with the classification of elements. It is a compound. Okay, so periodic table is dominated by metals because all the known elements, about 80%, 80% of known elements are metals. Metals show many properties which are opposite to those of non-metals. So these are all metals. Everything you see on your screen right now is a metal. Okay, the last thing is mercury. It is liquid and it is a liquid non-metal. It's an exception to general, you can say, characteristics of metals. So metals and non-metals are used in our daily life. They have a lot of use around us. Every day you find a lot of things which you use in your daily life, which are either metals or non-metals. They fulfill our needs and requirements. Iron is the most commonly used metal. It is used for making very big items such as heavy machines or bridges, as well as for making objects as small as a pin or a nail. Aluminium and copper are also commonly used metals in our household items, right? Utensils, and there are so many objects made of aluminium and copper wires, electrical fittings, etc. Gold and silver are widely used for making jewelry. They are noble metals. They are so pure and unreactive that they are precious, and that's why they are used for making jewelry. It has become very precious metal because of its importance and cost. In fact, metals are very important for national economy of any country. Some metals such as titanium, chromium, manganese, zirconium are called strategic metals. Titanium, chromium, manganese, zirconium. These are called strategic metals. Why? That is, these are very essential for countries' economy and defense. These metals and their alloys are widely used in atomic energy, space science project, jet engines, high grade steels, etc. Okay, non-metals are also essential for life. Oxygen is used by plants and animals for their survival. For respiration, it is used for combustion reaction in homes, factories, aeroplanes, missiles, vehicles. Nitrogen is widely used in natural form and its compounds. As you know, chlorine is used in water purification to kill germs. Sulfur is used in manufacture of sulfuric acid, which is an important industrial chemical and is regarded as king of chemicals. Which is the king of chemicals? Sulfuric acid. And from what is sulfuric acid made of? It is made up of sulfur. It is made from sulfur, right? So nitrogen, oxygen, chlorine, sulfur, these are all important non-metals which we use in our daily life, knowingly or unknowingly. Let's start with the general properties of metals and non-metals. See, we have learned in class 9 that electronic configuration, you remember what is electronic configuration? Electronic configuration is the distribution of electrons in various orbits of an atom. So we have learned about electronic configuration in class 9 of the atoms of some elements. If we write the electronic configuration of atoms of metals, we observe that atoms of metals have 1, 2 or 3 electrons in their outermost shell. For example, sodium, magnesium and aluminium are metals having 1, 2 and 3 electrons in their outermost shell or valence shell. Okay, what is the atomic number of sodium? Do you remember what is the symbol for atomic number? Z. And what does Z represent? What is Z? Z is atomic number which is equal to number of protons or number of electrons present in any atom. So Z is the atomic number, and Z or atomic number decides that how these electrons are going to get distributed in various shells. So there is this there are some rules on the basis of which electronic configuration is decided. In the first shell there can be maximum of 2 electrons, in the second shell there can be maximum of 8 electrons, in the third shell there can be maximum of 18 electrons, in the fourth shell there can be maximum of 32 electrons, and so on. Do you remember the formula by which this rule is governed? 2n square, if you remember, where n is the number of orbit. Okay, uh, so that's the first rule, that the number of maximum number of electrons which can be held in any shell is governed by the formula 2n square. The second rule is outermost shell. Outermost shell can have maximum of 8 electrons. Outermost shell cannot have more than 8 electrons. So if an element has got 3 shells, an element has got how many shells? 3 shells. It cannot have 18 electrons in the third shell. So the second rule is, you can say, overriding the first rule. The second rule says that the maximum number of electrons present in the outermost shell of any element, any atom of any element, is 8 only. Okay, so this was just a quick recap regarding the rules of electronic configuration. Now let's look at the electronic configuration of sodium. It has got electronic configuration of 2, 8, 1. In the first shell we have put 2 electrons. In the second shell we have put 8 electrons as per the rule 2n square, and the total number of electrons are 11. 10 electrons are already distributed in first two shells. Number of electrons remaining to be distributed is 1. So we cannot put it in the second shell because the maximum capacity of the second shell is full now. So we will create a third shell and put this electron in the third shell. Okay, so remember that we are not doing it. We have just understood that electrons are arranged in this particular manner in the outermost shell of all the elements. Okay, so this is the natural way in which electrons are distributed, and we have just understood this fact by the series of experiments and by, you can say, decades and decades and years of research and you can say practice. So the scientists have come to this conclusion after a lot of research and experiments. Okay, so this is not something some you can say imaginary concept created by us. This is actually the reality, which is constantly evolving as our understanding about things and the physics and chemistry and atoms and molecules is increasing. We are getting more and more information about how these small particles can exist inside an atom. So this understanding is based on our research, on our experiments, and on our calculations, on our scientists research, calculation, and understanding and experiments. Okay, so don't think that I'm telling that okay, this is how the electrons are distributed, because this is how it sounds nice. No, it doesn't. It has nothing to do with that. Okay, magnesium atomic number is 12. So electronic configuration of magnesium is 2 8 2. 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 in the second shell, and the remaining 2 in the last shell. Aluminium electronic atomic number 13, electronic configuration is 2 8 3. This KLM are the names given to the shell. The shells are named, the orbits are named starting from K. Okay, so there is no specific reason behind that. There must be, but till now we have not been taught about any specific reason about why the orbits have been named in such a manner. K, L, M, N, O, P, and so on. Okay, so we don't know about that, but yeah, we have to remember that this is how scientists have decided to, you can say, name the orbits. Yeah, but see, that's not the point. The point is what we are studying over here. We are studying the general properties of metals and non-metals, and the first property of metals which we are studying here is their electronic configuration. And what do we find in their electronic configuration? We find that any metal, you take any metal, it will have one, two, or three electrons in their outermost shell. Now, sodium, magnesium, aluminum are just three random metals in the periodic table, in the list of all the elements which are discovered till now. And they have got this peculiar, you can say, similarity between them, which is their atomic numbers are such that their electronic configuration comes out to be in a way that the outermost shell have one, two, or three electrons in them. Okay, so that's a general property of metal on which one important characteristic of metals is based. So what is this important characteristic? All metals are electropositive elements. That is the property which we are coming to. What do you mean by electropositive elements? So during chemical reactions, metals can easily lose the valence electrons, that is one, two, or three electrons in their outermost shell, to form positive ions. So how do they form positive ions? We are going to study about this in detail, but I'm going to tell you how do they form positive ions. Therefore, these elements are also called electropositive elements because they form positive ions. For example, let's take example of sodium. So sodium has got electronic configuration of 2 8 1. Now every element in the universe, an atom of every element in the universe wants to achieve stable electronic configuration. Why? Why stable electronic configuration? In order to become chemically stable. In order to become chemically stable, every element in the universe wants to achieve stable electronic configuration. So what is stable electronic configuration? Now, if you see a periodic table, the group 18, that is the last group of periodic table, is of noble gases. Okay, so these noble gases are, you can say, helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon. These are all the noble gases. Why are they known as noble gases? They are known as noble gases because in their outermost shell there are 8 electrons. That means their outermost shell is completely filled with electrons. But what about sodium over here? Sodium, this poor guy, has got one electron in its outermost shell. All the metals we know that they have got one, two, or three electrons in the outermost shell. For example, sodium has got one electron in its outermost shell. Now let me ask you, does it have a completely filled outermost shell? No. Is it chemically unreactive, stable? No. Not like helium, not like argon, not like neon. No, it is not. But does it want to become chemically stable, unreactive? Yes. So it will try to achieve this stable electronic configuration by doing something with that number of electron which is present in its outermost shell. How many electrons are there in the outermost shell? One. So for sodium, it is very easy. For sodium, it is very easy to lose this one electron which is present in its outermost shell and get converted into sodium ion. How? How does it get converted into sodium ion? See, it loses one electron. It loses one electron and becomes sodium ion and has this electronic configuration of 2, 8. Now you must be wondering, where is this positive charge coming from? Let me tell you. So sodium as a metal has atomic number 11. Okay. Number of protons as 11 and number of electrons as 11. But sodium, after losing one electron from its outermost shell, what happens to it? Its atomic number. Okay, let's not talk about atomic number because that will be confusing. Let me talk about the number of protons. Does it lose any proton? No. So number of proton is still 11. What about the number of electrons? Yes, it does lose one electron. So the 11 electrons now become 10 electrons. 11 electrons now become 10 electrons. Okay, now do you see over here what is happening? Proton is one more than the electron. Proton is one more than the electron. That is, initially number of proton and electron was same. So sodium was neutral. It was not positive or negative. It was chemically unbalanced, but it was neutral, electrically neutral. Now it has become electrically positive, and that's what they mean by electropositive. Now it has become electrically positive or electropositive. Why? Because the number of positive charges, the number of positive particles present in the nucleus of sodium is one more than the number of electrons present in its orbits. The number of protons are 11 and number of total number of electrons present in its shells is 10. So it acquires a unit positive charge by losing one electron. See, here it has lost one electron. One of the electron has separated. That's why we have written Na plus electron. This electron has separated and sodium has become positively charged. And that's why, see, all of the metallic elements, they behave in the same way. Magnesium, it has got two electrons in its outermost shell, loses two electrons and becomes Mg2 plus magnesium ion with two positive charges. Aluminium, which has got three electrons in its outermost shell, loses three electrons, becomes Al3 plus three positive charges it has after becoming an ion. That's why this is not just limited to sodium, magnesium, aluminum. Any metal in the periodic table, any metal known till date behaves in the same way. So all metals are called electropositive elements. Why are they called electropositive elements? Because they lose electrons and they become positively charged. They lose electron and they become positively charged. Okay. Thus, we may define metals as those elements which lose electron and form positive ions. Okay, so now it is clear how do metal behave, how do metal, what is this peculiar characteristics of metal which makes them metal. Okay, let's go ahead. It may be noted that hydrogen and helium are exceptions. Hydrogen is a non-metal having only one electron in its outermost shell, K shell. And helium is also a non-metal having only two electrons in its outermost shell, K shell. So I just told you that all the metals have got one, two, or three electrons in their outermost shell. I just told you that. You remember? But we do not mean hydrogen and helium to be included in the list of metals. I'm sorry, why did I put a negative sign? We do not intend to include hydrogen and helium in the list of metals. Why? Because they have also got one and two electrons, but that does not make them metals. They also have got one and two electrons in their outermost shell, but that does not make them metals. Okay, so they are exceptions and they are not metals. Although they have got one and two electrons in their outermost shell, they are not metals. Okay, physical properties of metals. Now let's go through this very quickly. See, metals are solid at room temperature. Iron, copper, aluminum, silver, gold, zinc, sodium, lead, these are all solids at room temperature, except mercury. Mercury is a liquid at room temperature. Now you would ask why? Why is mercury liquid at room temperature? You see, that is how it is made. That is how it is. There is one more metal which has a very you can say low melting point. It melts at room temperature. Like if you take it in your hand, it will absorb the heat from the warmth of your hand and it will start melting. I want you, this is a task I'm giving you. I want you to find its name. Okay, a metal which you take in your hand and it starts melting right away. It starts melting at room temperature. It is solid. It is not liquid like mercury, but it starts melting as soon as it is brought to room temperature level. If you hold it in your hand, it will start melting. What metal is this? Please search and let me know in the group. I'll be waiting for that. Okay, next property of metal is metals are lustrous and can be polished. What do you mean by luster? Luster means shine. They are shiny. They can be polished. Okay, the shining appearance of metals is known as metallic luster. For example, if we take sample of iron, copper, aluminum, magnesium and clean their surfaces by rubbing them, they might look little dull. But if we shine them, if we polish them, if we clean their surfaces, we will observe that they have shining surface. Gold, silver, copper, they have metallic luster. Metals like aluminum, magnesium appear white, but they are lustrous. Gold is yellow in color, copper is reddish in color, but they are lustrous. It may be noted that metals have shining luster only when they are freshly cut. When metals are kept exposed for a long time, they get dull appearance. They lose most of their shine or brightness. The metals lose their shine or brightness on keeping the in air for a long time due to the formation of a thin layer of oxide or carbonate or sulfide on their surface by the action of various gases present in air. Okay, so there are so many gases around us. They all attack metal surfaces, and the metal surfaces are surrounded or coated with the help of these compounds, which are present in the form of gases in our atmosphere. And that is basically, one form of corrosion. Corrosion we have discussed briefly in the first chapter, but yes, corrosion will be discussed in detail later also. But yeah, that's why you can say metals are having this dull appearance. If we rub this dull surface of a metal with a sandpaper, then the outer corroded layer is removed and metal object becomes shiny and bright again. Third property of metal, they are hard. Metals are hard. Generally, metals are hard. Not equally hard. Not all metals are equally hard. But if you take small pieces of metals like iron, copper, magnesium, aluminum and try to cut these metals with sharp knife, you will observe that hardness of metal varies from metal to metal. The metals like iron, copper, aluminum are quite hard and they cannot be cut with a knife. Thus, most metals are hard and strong. Therefore, they can bear a heavy load on them. That's why buildings, constructions, bridges, you can say uh, towers, the towers which carry electrical cables along them, right? They are all made up of metals, right? They are very hard. They can bear a lot of load. This property is used in the construction of building, bridges, heavy machines. However, lithium, sodium, potassium are common exceptions, which are soft metals and which can be easily cut with knife. Always handle sodium metal with care. Caution, okay? This is a caution. Always handle sodium metal with care. Keep sodium metal away from water. If you want to know why to keep sodium metal away from water, we'll study about the reactivity of sodium a little bit ahead in the chapter, and then we'll come to know. Okay, metals are malleable. What do you mean by malleable? Metals are generally malleable. The malleability means that the metals can be beaten with a hammer into very thin sheets without breaking. The malleability means that metals can be beaten with a hammer into very thin sheets without breaking. Beaten to form sheets, that is malleability. Place small pieces of some metal such as iron or copper on a block of iron and strike it 4 to 5 times with a hammer. It becomes flat, right? And the metal pieces become slightly larger. This means that metals on beating with hammer, they can be converted into thin sheets. This property of beating a metal into thin sheets is malleability. All the metals can be beaten with hammer to form thin sheets and also called foils. Gold and silver are among the best malleable metals. They can be hammered into sheets which are much thinner than paper. Aluminium and copper are also highly malleable metals. Because of this property, metals can be used for many purposes. Gold and silver ornaments of different designs are prepared from small pieces of metals on hammering. Gold can be beaten into leaves, gold leaves. You have studied about gold leaf electroscope and Rutherford's in class 8. You have studied that, and you have studied about Rutherford's experiment in which he uh, you know uh, projected this small particles into the gold foil, and he found that most of the alpha particles went through it. That was Rutherford's gold foil experiment. So gold sheet can be made as thin as 0.00002 mm by beating it. So that's the best malleable metal. Aluminum foil, they are used for packing food articles. Those are aluminum foils. You know that. It keeps your food safe, and it allows, uh, it does not allow the external agent like moisture, or you can say microorganisms to reach your food, and it keeps the food uh, fresh. Metals are ductile. Ductility is also an important property of metal. It means that metals can be drawn or stretched into wires. Do you see this copper wire over here? You must have seen copper wire. Copper wire, how is it made from copper? So it can be stretched to form thin wires. Gold and silver are the most ductile metals. For example, 100 milligrams of silver can be drawn into a thin wire of about 200 meters. Similarly, we can draw a wire of about 2 kilometer from only 1 gram of gold. We can draw a wire of about 2 kilometer from only 1 gram of gold. Copper and aluminium are also ductile, and therefore these can be drawn into thin wires which are used in electrical wiring. Copper and aluminum are also ductile, and they are used for thin wiring in electricals. So we can say that metals are malleable and ductile. It is because of these properties. Metals can be given different shapes to make various articles. For example, silver foils, commonly known as varak, are used for decorative purposes on sweets. You must have seen. काजू कतरी के ऊपर होता है ना silver foil. Similarly, aluminum foils are used for wrapping chocolates, cigarettes, medicines, foodstuffs, etc. These are also used to seal bottles and containers. Copper foils are used to make utensils and other containers. Iron is hammered to iron sheets which are used to make utensils, buckets, boxes, drums, water tanks, etc. Very basic things, basic general knowledge we are getting over here. Metals are good conductors of heat. All metals are good conductors of heat. If you place one end of a metal rod into hot water, you will observe that the other end also gets heated. This shows that metals are good conductors of heat. The conductivity of heat by metals can be shown by performing the following experiment. See the experiment. We have to take a small wire or strip of copper or aluminium and clamp it on the stand as shown. Fix a pin to the free end of wire using a wax. Over here we have put some wax, and with that wax we have attached a pin. We have made a pin stick to that wax which is on the metallic wire. Then we start heating the wire or strip with a burner or a candle near its clamped end. Means on the other end we have to start heating it. After some time the wax will start melting because the heat will be conducted through the metallic wire and it will reach the wax. The wax will start melting and the pin will fall down. That means this shows that heat energy is conducted through the body of metals. So metals are good conductors of heat. Okay, the metal wire will not melt, showing that metals have high melting points. The conduction of heat is called thermal conductivity. Silver is the best conductor of heat. Copper and aluminium are also good conductors of heat and therefore they are used for making household utensils. Water boilers are generally made of copper and aluminium because they are good conductors of heat. Lead is the poorest conductor of heat. Mercury metal is also a poor conductor. So best conductors are copper and aluminium. That's why they are used for making household utensils, right? Water boilers are made from copper and aluminium, but lead and mercury are poor conductors. Lead is the poorest conductor. So how does metals conduct heat? That is also one question we should, I think, focus on and try to find out the answer to it. How does metals conduct it? When a metal is heated, its atoms gain energy and start vibrating more vigorously. This energy is transformed or transferred actually to the electrons which can move through the metals. When the energetic electrons move through the metals, they transfer energy to other electrons and atoms of the metal. In this way, heat is conducted from one end of the metal to its other end. Thus, metals have characteristic property of heat conductivity, also known as thermal conductivity. Right? Metals are good conductors of electricity. Metals allow electric current to pass through them and therefore metals are good conductors of electricity. And we have studied current electricity or electric current in physics chapter 1, and we know do metals are why do metals conduct electricity, or why are they good conductors of electricity? Because they have got free electrons, and these free electrons they flow in metals, they flow on the surface of metals, and they carry these charges, or you can say this flow of charges, or you can say the electrons flow, which is nothing but electric current. So these experiments we have already performed in physics chapter 1, so I'm not going to go through them all over again because we already know it. The electrical and thermal conductivities of metals are due to the presence of free electrons in them. Among all the metals, silver is the best conductor of electricity. We know that. Copper and aluminium are the next best conductors of electricity. Since silver is expensive, therefore copper and aluminium are commonly used for making electrical wires. However, metals like iron and mercury offer comparatively great resistance to the flow of current, and therefore they have low electrical conductivities. Okay, metals like iron and mercury offer comparatively greater resistance to the flow of current, and therefore they have low electrical conductivities. You must have seen that wires which carry current in our homes have a coating of rubber like material, polyvinyl chloride, PVC. This coating protects us from current when we use the metallic wire. So basically these wires are coated with PVC, which is a bad conductor of electricity, which does not which is an insulator basically, which does not allow electric current to reach our hand when we hold those wires with our hands. Okay, so uh, okay, yeah, we know many things about that. So let's go ahead. Metals have high densities. What is it? What do you mean by density? Do you remember when in class 9th you studied density? So density is nothing but mass upon volume. The ratio of mass upon volume is density, and metals, they have usually they have high densities. They are heavy and they have high densities. For example, density of mercury metal is very high, 13.6 gram per centimeter cube. You know what do you mean by that? That means that 13.6 gram of mercury occupies 1 centimeter cube. So in 1 centimeter cube of volume, we have 13.6 gram of mercury, which is very, very high amount. So mass per unit volume ratio of mercury, that is density of mercury, is very high. However, there are some exceptions. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, aluminium have low densities. Densities of metals are generally proportional to their atomic masses. The smaller the atomic mass and greater the size of metal atom, the smaller is its density. The smaller is its density. Magnesium, aluminium, titanium are used in construction purposes because they are light metals. They are commonly used to make transportation equipments, right? So you can say the smaller atomic mass and the greater the size of metal atom, the smaller is its density. Okay. If the atomic mass is larger and size of atom is smaller, then the density will be greater. And magnesium, aluminum, and titanium are generally light. Their density is little less, and that's why they are used for construction purposes and also for making transportation equipments. So this is about densities. Then metals have high melting and boiling points. Most of the metals except sodium and potassium have high melting and boiling points. Tungsten has a very high melting point and therefore it is used whenever high temperatures are required. For example, it is used in the filaments of electric bulbs. Okay, so they have high melting and boiling points because uh, generally metals have these properties of having high melting and boiling points. There is no reason behind that. But what is the use of this? The use is they can withstand very high temperature, and that's why they are used for making filaments of electric bulbs, specifically tungsten. Metals are strong. Most of the metals are strong and they have high tensile strength. So what do you mean by tensile strength? Tensile strength means they can bear a lot of tension. Bear a lot of tension. Tension force. Force of tension. So this property of metal, um, they make metals very useful in making, cranes, bridges, girders. You know girders? So girders are basically those platforms which are placed on two, you can say, poles of a bridge. You want to see a girder? Let me show you. A girder is made up of metal and it is used in the construction of the platform on which, uh, you know, which make up a bridge basically. Let me show you what is a girder. Yeah, so these are girders, the beams. See, so these are metallic girders which are placed on the poles, which generally hold a bridge together, and they are made up of metals because metals have very high. See, this is what I'm talking about. These are girders. ये गर्डर के ऊपर पूरा अभी सीमेंटिंग होके रोड बनेगा. तो ये जो पोल्स है ना ब्रिज के, उसके ऊपर ऐसे गर्डर रखते हैं बिकॉज ये गर्डर्स मेटल के हैं. दे हैव गॉट ह्यूज टेंसाइल स्ट्रेंथ. तो कितना भी ये लोड बेयर कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. Metals are sonorous. What do you mean by sonorous? Sonorous means they produce a ringing effect on being struck. Most of the metals produce sound when they strike a hard surface or a hard object. The metals which produce sound on hitting a hard object or surface are called sonorous. That is why school bells are made up of metals. Of course. So these are 11 properties of metals which we have just studied till now. Now let's come back to the electronic configuration of okay, so this is electronic configuration of non-metals, and then we'll study the physical properties of non-metals, and then we'll go to the chemical properties. Okay, so this part is huge. Okay, there's a lot to study in this part. So let's start with electronic configurations of non-metals. The atoms of non-metals have usually 4 to 8 electrons in their outermost shells. For example, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon. It's also a non-metal. See, generally when we talk about non-metals, we don't consider noble gases. But here they have considered noble gases because, generally the uh, elements which are non-metallic are called, generally which the elements which are not metals are in the category of non-metals. So neon is not a metal. That's why it is in the category of non-metals. But actually neon is also not a non-metal. Okay, it is other than it is little different from a non-metal also. It is a noble gas, but still they have considered it as a non-metal and they are not wrong here. Okay, so carbon, fluorine, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine, neon, these are all non-metals. And what is their electronic configuration? See, atomic number of carbon is 6, nitrogen is 7, oxygen is 8, fluorine is 9, and neon's atomic number is 10. So the electronic configuration of carbon is 2, 4, nitrogen is 2, 5, oxygen is 2, 6, fluorine is 2, 7, and electronic configuration of neon is 2, 8. So as we can see that these metals, they have got 4 to 8 electrons in their outermost shell. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If we don't consider 8, we can say that the elements which have got 4, 5, 6, or 7 electrons in their outermost shell are metals. Sorry, they are non-metals, not metals. Metals have got 1, 2, or 3 electrons in their outermost shell. Okay. See, it is clear that non-metals usually have 4 to 8 electrons in their outermost shell. But there are two exceptions, the same exceptions which were there in metals. Hydrogen and helium are non-metals, but they do not have 4 to 8 electrons in their outermost shell. They have 1 and 2 electrons respectively in their outermost shell. But still, they are non-metals. Okay, so let's try to understand how do these non-metals which have 4 to 8 electrons in their outermost shell react during a chemical reaction. See, these non-metals, they are known as electronegative elements for a reason that during any chemical reaction, they accept electrons and complete their outermost shell. Let's take an example of chlorine. Chlorine has got atomic number of 17. The electronic configuration of chlorine is 281. I'm sorry, 287. So this chlorine will accept one electron in its outermost shell since its outermost shell has 7 electrons, and for becoming chemically stable, for completing its outermost shell, for having a stable electronic configuration of 288, this atom of chlorine will should have 8 electron in its outermost shell, and for completing its outermost shell it accepts one electron and becomes a chloride ion with electronic configuration 288. See, now it is chemically unreactive or stable, but it is chemically unreactive or stable, but it is electrically negative. It is no more neutral, electrically neutral, like how it was before in the state of atom. Chloride ion is electrically negative, and that's why it is known as electronegative element. All the metals, they they behave like how this chlorine is behaving. To complete their outermost shell, they accept electron and they become electronegative elements. Okay, oxygen has atomic number of uh, 16. Am I sure? No, I'm sorry. Atomic number of 8. Okay, so the electronic configuration of oxygen is 2 comma 8, and I'm sorry, 2 comma 6. Electronic configuration of oxygen is 2 comma 6, and it requires 2 electrons to complete its outermost shell, and after becoming oxide ion, its electronic configuration becomes 2 comma 8. So now it is chemically stable or unreactive, but it has now become electronegative. So that is what happens to non-metals. This is, you can say, one of the most important common characteristic of non-metals, that they form electronegative ions. Okay, so non-metals are those elements which can form negative ions by gaining electrons. This is exactly contrary to metals, which are elements which donate or lose electron to form positive ions, but non-metals form negative ions by gaining electron. What are the physical properties of non-metals? Let's go through it very quickly. See, in your previous class, you have learned that non-metals are very few in numbers as compared to metals. Among 118 elements known, there are only 22 non-metals. Some common examples of non-metals are carbon, sulfur, iodine, oxygen, hydrogen, phosphorus, chlorine, etc. These are either solids or gases except bromine, which is a liquid. Except bromine, all are either solids or liquids. Though non-metals are small in numbers, yet they represent an extremely important class of elements because they form huge set of compounds with other elements, that is non-metals and metals both. Non-metals may display many property opposite to those of metals. We can collect common non-metals such as carbon, coal or graphite, sulfur or iodine, and study all the properties as studied for metals. These studies conclude the following general properties of non-metals. So let's list it over here. First property, non-metals may be solid, liquids or gases at room temperature. Gaseous nonmetals are hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, fluorine, chlorine, helium, neon, argon, etc. Liquid nonmetals are bromine, just one liquid nonmetal, so that is bromine. Solid nonmetals are carbon, phosphorus, sulfur, iodine, etc. Non-metals are non-lustrous. This is the second most important property and cannot be polished. Most of the non-metals are non-lustrous and dull and they cannot be polished. Only graphite and iodine are lustrous non-metals. Graphite and iodine are lustrous non-metal. There is one more non-metal which I want to mention over here, which is diamond. Diamond has got this uh, spectacular brilliance, actually brilliance, that is a shine, okay, which is contrary to the, you can say, it's not luster, but it is, you can say, brilliance or shine, which is contrary to the general properties of non-metals. So that's an exception. Non-metals are generally soft. Most of the non-metals are soft except diamond, which is an allotropic form of carbon. What are allotropes? We are going to study in the chapter carbon and its compounds. So you will know that. Non-metals are brittle. Non-metals are brittle. Non-metals are brittle and these break into pieces when hammered or stretched. For example, sulfur and phosphorus are brittle non-metals. Since non-metals are not malleable, they cannot be beaten into sheets. They are brittle. Non-metals are not ductile. Non-metals are not ductile and therefore cannot be drawn into thin wires. There is one exception. Um Not, this is not an element, but yeah, this is a non-metal. You can say nylon. Nylon can be stretched into form into the form of thin wires. It is a non-metal, but it's not an element. Okay, it's a compound and it's a very complicated compound, but still it can be stretched into form of in the form of wires, drawn into wires maybe. Yeah. Non-metals are bad conductors of heat and electricity. Non-metals are bad conductors of heat and electricity. They do not conduct heat and electricity because they do not have free electrons. There is one exception. The allotropic form of carbon, graphite, is a good conductor of heat and electricity like metals. Therefore, graphite is used for making electrodes, which are used in electrolysis. Non-metals have low densities. Most of the non-metals are light. For example, the density of sulfur is 2 grams per centimeter cube, very, very less. Non-metals have generally low melting and boiling points. Most of the non-metals have low melting and boiling points except graphite, which has a very high melting point. Non-metals are not sonorous. They do not produce any striking sound when they are struck with hard surfaces. Therefore, they are non-sonorous. Okay, so these are the physical properties of non-metals with their exceptions. Okay, some exceptions to general trends. Now, these are the exceptions in all the cases of metals and non-metals to be listed separately. So, you might want to take some notes over here. A comparison of physical properties of metals and non-metals shows that we cannot group elements according to their physical properties alone. Okay, there are many exceptions to general properties. Some of the exceptions are given below. Look at the exceptions, please. All metals except mercury are solid at room temperature. Mercury is liquid. Metals in general have high melting and boiling points. However, gallium and cesium have very low melting points. Gallium has such a low melting point that it melts in our palm. The question which I asked earlier, we have got its answer over here. So no need to tell in the group now. Okay. Metals are generally hard, but sodium and potassium are the examples of metals which are soft. Therefore, unlike metals, these can be cut with a knife. They have low densities and low melting points, which sodium and potassium. Non-metals do not have shiny luster, but iodine and graphite, they have luster. Non-metals are generally soft, but carbon is a non-metal which can exist in different forms called allotropes. Diamond is one allotrope of carbon and which is very hard. It is the hardest known natural substance and has very high melting and boiling point. Diamond tools are used for cutting metals also. Another allotrope of carbon is graphite. It is a good conductor of electricity, unlike other non-metals. So these are all exceptions. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to talk about chemical properties of metals as well as non-metals and discuss them in detail. So this was the first part of the chapter, metals and non-metals. These kind of small parts I'm going to divide the whole chapter in, and for making it basically easier for you to understand. So the next part will cover the chemical properties of metals and non-metals. In today's class, I just want you to take notes on the physical properties. So in the next class, we can take notes of chemical properties. See you in the next class. Bye bye.